Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Science of SaaS Startups podcast. Today, I'm talking to Dr. Sven Koerner. Sven is the co-founder and CEO of thingsTHINKING. They're an AI platform which helps companies to understand unstructured natural language. Sven, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone.
No problem. So I just want to kick things off by asking a couple of questions just to help the audience get to know you a little bit. So obviously, everybody's working environment has changed a huge amount over the last 18 months. Do you love working from home, or would you rather be in the office? What's the right balance there?
I think a hybrid approach is probably the right balance. Matter of fact, we've had this before the pandemic hit. So for us, not a lot changed. I personally have been to the office, I think 4 times ever since March 2020. And it works perfectly well because our focus is always on getting, the right people into the team, and especially in the AI space, people don't wait at every corner of the street and that you hire them. I mean, there's not that many people available, as we all know. So we're pretty much just interested in what I call is in between the people's ears. I don't care where this is in terms of location and timing, as long as it gets the job done. And therefore we've been what is now called remote first from the get-go. It's not that we chose to be that way. It was just pretty much the only option we had, and it's fine. Nowadays, supposedly, it's a big advantage because you have all the processes and workflows in place, because that is slightly different, right? If you used to work just in the office and now you're remotely, there's, the whole alignment of interests, tasks, and workflows, obviously, and we have this. So for us, not a lot changed. But I guess everyone can pick their favorite way of working, which varies quite a bit also within our employees. Some just like to go to the office, and that's fine because now with a vaccination kind of getting better, we actually have that option. And some say, no, I'd rather stay at home, and I guess that's fine as well.
Yeah, I definitely feel like software has been quite ahead of the curve in terms of a lot of companies have had a big shock and had to reorganize how they do everything very rapidly, whereas I think a lot of software companies have been working remotely anyway, even before this all happened. So it's been a bit more of a smoother transition for that.
Yeah.
And what inspired you to start your journey in AI and natural language processing? Like, what kind of first sort of piqued that interest when you were younger?
Yeah, well, it actually started right during my master's studies at university. It was back in 2004, 5, and 6, where we realized that coming from the software engineering background, that when specifications in terms of like textual specifications, like RFPs and stuff like that, according to those, people build software, and you lose some information on the way, and it's excuse my language here, but it's shit in, shit out, right? If the specifications aren't good, the software is not going to get any better. So we did research on that, and it turns out that right after my master's thesis, I was offered a part-time PhD position, which I accepted, and doing keep working on that subject of trying to make the specifications better. Turned out that we realized that people who know a lot about language, which are linguists, are not that good at software, and people who know a lot about software are not that good at natural language in terms of like really understanding how it works. And if you use the intersection of those, you more or less end up in the NLP space. Back then, we neither called it AI nor computational linguistics. It was all about vector spaces and languages. But then again, 2006 and in the following years, that is still, I think, considered part of the last AI winter. So yeah, and we just played around academically. That was super interesting. Realistically speaking, the accuracy and precision we got back then, that was not ready for prime time like real world applications, and then we just kind of migrated into that space, just with standing on the shoulders of giants when everything got better, so to speak, in the AI space by 2010, 2011, and with GPUs and the usual suspects coming in, and all of a sudden stuff actually started working. And we're like, wow, this is not just an academic mind game. This is actually something that might do a proper job in the future. And yeah, then in 2017 we were done with me and part of the team with the PhD studies. I finished in 2014, and we just said, hey, you know what? Let's do this properly, and found a company. And and here we are. So.
Yeah, okay, great. And how often do you completely switch off from the digital world? And if you do that at all, like how long do you do it for?
I try to play a lot of music and also do a lot of sports, and specifically road biking. But that's only for hours. I personally have to say, do not switch your from the digital work for like days and or weeks, like some people do. I haven't done that yet. Probably worth pursuing that. But yeah, like in May when I went to road bike training camp, there's probably 2 days where you don't do that, but then again, you got to upload your training data, and all of a sudden you're back in the digital world, right? So yeah, I have not disconnected for probably longer than 48 hours ever since, entering the bubble. But I try to have a healthy disconnect, like daily, and just, take your time off with family and friends and everything. And because, especially in a startup, but I guess anywhere else in the world, there's always more on your plate than you can eat during a day. So, don't get fed up with going like, I can't make it. No, you will never be able to make it. Just get done what you need to get done, and then just draw a line right there and say, okay, this is me time now. And I get along with that pretty well as of right now. But detox, what some people do, I don't feel, the way I use it, I don't feel as toxic to me yet. Might change. But
yeah,
being in a startup, I'm not young enough, or or maybe I'm too experienced to, rake in the 120-hour weeks, like week after week. I don't do that. We don't do that in the company. We strongly encourage our people not to do that, because that might work for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, but eventually you're going to start making mistakes and lose stuff, and then you just, part of that flywheel that keeps spinning. And you rather should, especially when working strategically, you got to take your breaks. Funny enough, every time I go for longer bike rides, turns out your brain doesn't stop working, right? I have pretty good ideas, and I usually take my Fridays off, which is like, it's blocked in my calendar and says think.
okay.
So, just do the stuff you want to do, like read the stuff you always want to read during the week, or, go through papers, have a look at the latest research, try some coding experiences, and see, just do new stuff and not the usual stuff. And but sometimes I just go for a 4-hour bike ride, and you always come back with good ideas after that, because again, those routines in the background of your brain, they just keep running, even though you're just thinking you're just pushing pedals. No, you're not. And that, just because you're in front of the screen doesn't make you better, right? Sometimes it's just worth just walking away from the screen and getting some distraction. And so far that works pretty well for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. And professionally speaking, like who's your biggest idol, and why would you choose that person?
That is a very good question. I've been asked that, I think, once and once only. No one specific. I personally, coming back to the great philosophers and stuff like that, right? I like people who think outside the box and are convinced that some things will work, even though they cannot prove it yet. Go like, this is a big thing. But for instance, I'm not like a lot of people would say, like the Elon Musk type of style of stuff. That is not my thing. So the way they do it with the whole storytelling nowadays, which I guess is very important in terms of, getting the proper funding, outstanding jobs. So I try to get the best of all of these people. I just look at them and, just whatever I think works for me, I try to pick and improve on my side, because there's obviously a lot you can learn. The most I personally learn is from people who have been very successful. It turns out that those people are very open to lending a helping hand / giving you, recommendations if you just ask them. For free. A lot of startup people, and that's maybe one of the biggest advice. And my grandma said that back in the day, said, if you don't get what you want, ask for it. That works wonders. It's incredible. Like, a lot of people just don't ask. Just ask, properly, and be nice, obviously. But a lot of people you would never imagine, they're like, oh, they have better things to do, which they probably have. And they answer your questions. They sit down with you for lunch, and they give you their insight. And the most important thing is, the more successful these people are, and we're actually talking, billionaire types of people, the less they have the attitude that like, I know everything. I mean, obviously, I mean, I guess it was called the Dunning-Kruger effect. The more you know that you don't know anything. And the same with them. They've been very successful, but they don't postulate stuff like, and this is how you have to do this and this and this. They don't do that. What they usually do is they just ask you questions, which again make you think for another week. Like, oh, that's a freaking good question. I don't have an answer to that. Yeah. And that's how they. I guess this is also how they made their companies big, right? Just asking the right people the right questions, like, why do we do this, or why would you do it this way? And you go like, huh, good question. Yeah, let me think about that again. And yeah, that's the main thing. But a specific person, no. From sports, yes. From the industry, no.
Just a little bits from everybody. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we jump into things thinking, do you want to just kick things off with an overview of the company and what you're trying to do there?
Yeah. So the focus we're doing with things thinking is based on processing the semantics of natural language. So based on everything, our platform, which is called Samantha, does is based on semantics. So it doesn't matter what your choice of words is. It actually doesn't matter which language in terms of like country language you're using. So it could be any of the 200 something languages out there. It all comes down to understanding the meaning, grasping that, and then being able to work with that. Essentially, what we humans do, and obviously we're humans are way better at that, but like with our conversation right now, you would not try to understand or remember the succession of words and the sequence that I use the words. Well, neither do I remember them right now. But that's how the classical machine learning approaches would do it. And Samantha works slightly different, and we use a combination of technologies. And the main asset for our customers, and again, you don't have to call that AI, whether it is or not. What the customers want to see is, does it solve my problem? And Samantha, first of which, works out of the box. So there's no training necessary, which is one of the biggest obstacles in the whole AI world. You can educate her, not train her, very important, like a coworker. So you just give her 1 or 2 examples, like stuff you're looking for. If you want me to do something based on unstructured information, text, pictures, whatever, you show me that once or twice, maybe 3 or 4 times. I mean, Ben showing that to Sven, right? You don't have to give me 5,000 labeled examples of that in perfect quality, because if you had to do this, you'd probably rather say, Sven, you got to go see a doctor. Something's wrong with you. And that's kind of the approach we take. On top of that is multimodality. So it's not just the text. You know, there's a lot of stuff involved that when we look at documents, like the structure, the optical structure, that tells us a lot about what means what and what belongs together. This is stuff we also do with Samantha and the platform. So essentially trying to copy is the wrong word because we're by far not there yet, obviously, but how humans process that information. And that comes with fuzziness, because semantics is obviously not 100% strict. I mean, if we both do a good job, whatever your understanding is of what we do and my understanding of what I try to convey in this message is similar, probably not exactly the same thing. But that fuzziness turns out in real life is what customers and people using the platform see as the system being very robust. Like, oh, I just showed her that, and now all of a sudden you can also do this and this and this, right? And that's the very important part. So essentially it comes down to just being fast. And the last part, and that adds on the being fast part, is you don't need an AI expert to educate and run the system. The most important thing, to use an analogy here, a lot of approaches we have in the AI world today suffer from the issue that, you know, everyone has horses and now we're trying to sell people cars. But when you buy the cars, a lot of times you got to get those 40 chauffeurs with it. Otherwise, you won't be able to operate them. And that's the biggest issue, because the people who have the real life challenges, those are domain experts, and might be in engineering, might be in, you know, we have big 4 customers that do something in, I don't know, M&A, transactions, tax, whatever. But they're not AI experts, neither are they techies, but they don't need to be. Like you and I, we don't need to know, you know, how exactly our car works just to get from A to B, but we can still get from A to B. And that's what we call the divide and conquer approach. So Samantha does whatever she does, and that's a technical part, but that's our part. But you can tell her what you want her to do. And best case scenario, and again, that's the biggest difference, our customers and our partners, you know, mentioning the UiPaths and the others, we can yield results within 24 hours, which is usually a lot faster than anyone else. And that builds trust, because all of a sudden the customer's like, okay, I did this. I know what I did, and this works now. I get how the system works. So you kind of also take that black box thing out of the AI stuff, where someone just takes your data and then comes back 3 months later and says, it works now. You go like, why? Like, well, it works now. And you have changes, like give me another 3 months, I'll be back in 3 months and then it'll work. And I mean, the lengthy and costs associated with that, obviously, but it all comes down to being able to drive the car yourself. And that's our biggest asset, I want to say.
And I noticed you described Samantha as a her. Is that by design? Like, what was the thinking there?
Well, we figured it has to be female. Funny thing, first of which, because all, I mean, looking at all the movies and all the other scripts that are out there in books, if an AI system is male, they tend to be very harmful to the human population. They just
very much so.
It's a psychological thing, I guess. So it's okay. It can be a he. I'm calling it an it. Fine, you can do that because it isn't it, right? Excuse me. It turns out that calling her Samantha, everyone obviously goes for she, and acceptance, I mean, psychologically with the customers is totally funny, because I mean, the system does make mistakes like everyone else makes mistakes, right? And people are like, oh, Samantha's wrong. But they actually, I mean, when they talk about the system, it is like they're talking about a coworker, which is completely funny, right? And they say, oh, I got to tell Samantha something else because this part she hasn't understood yet. Hold on, sorry. My sound might have been gone because someone called on my phone. I don't know, did I cut out, or did you?
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So yeah, let me just repeat that quick so you can cut that out. Yeah. So yeah, taking her as a female, that's just, like, I don't want to say bonding with the system, but yes, it's essentially what happens. People just call her Samantha, and it's kind of a catchy name. And on top of that, it's a registered trademark, so that helps us too. But yeah, we figured it has to be female, and we call her she. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And there are obviously a lot of NLP solutions out there. I mean, specifically, like, how do you, or how does your approach differ?
Well, as I said, the main thing is that you as a customer can work it yourself. You don't have to have
self-service approach.
Yeah, exactly. And that it works best case scenario with 1 or 2 examples. And again, that comes down to speed. And there's a lot of stuff, and probably also some, I mean, the whole snake oil analogies with stuff that's on PowerPoints. We tend not to show any of that to our customers. We say, what's your challenge? Can you describe it? And do you have a couple examples? And we will show you on your very own examples, not on our demo case, that this is what we can do. Sometimes we can just do anything you want and it works completely. And then obviously customers sign up pretty quickly. Sometimes we say, okay, this is what we can do. This is what we cannot do. And again, it comes down to building trust. And also it helps us assess the situation, because if customers do not have examples and like a proper understanding of what they want to do, they just look at the AI space because, someone from C-level told them they read something in Forbes and they have to do it. And so it's just like, yeah. And in this case, it's a lot more concrete. If you say, what's your problem? Can you describe it? Yes, I can. Do you have examples for it? And can you tell me what you would like to wish from the fairy, what I call it? If there's a fairy that would help you, what would the fairy have to do? And then they say this, and this. And you go like 1, 3, and 4 can do. 2, no, I'm sorry. And then they can, and you just show them live, and nothing beats that. Like, this is what the system does. This is the live systems. And we really get that question quite often when we talk to customers, where they've been in the machine learning space for quite a while and tried a lot of tools for weeks and months. And they go like, in the first meeting, go like, is this the live system now? You go like, yeah. I mean, again, you've seen so many PowerPoints. Try it out. And I always tell the customers, if you're not allowed to touch the system after the second meeting, think about that, right? I mean, the test drive, yes. Do not go on the racetrack with the car, to using that analogy again, but can I just quickly just park it and drive and go back and forth with it a couple of meters and just see how that works? And go, yeah, you can. And again, it comes down to building trust, I guess.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, like the kind of challenge of working or bringing together the kind of computer data science community with the kind of linguist community. Like, how did you kind of bridge that challenge?
Well, we were lucky enough, or fortunate enough to get the right people in the room, because especially the linguist type, that's more on the philosophical side. I mean, actually also stuff they study. I mean, now there's you can get grades in computer linguistics. I mean, I think that came out about 10 years ago or so, but we just talked to the right people, and it was interesting to see that the linguists are very interested in working with the computer science community. And if you're open-minded on the computer science community, you will learn to understand the beauty of language. And there was so much stuff I learned about language, which was, I mean, what's that nice English adjective? I was flabbergasted sometimes, going like, wow, that is so crazy. And then you get a totally different viewing angle on the whole Shakespearean stuff. You go like, yeah, man, that is just, I mean, language is, as one of the guys said on the team's, language is awesome and so nice because it is so hard in terms of like, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It doesn't work that way. But this is what we humans primarily use, right? I mean, if we all had like neural implants and we could just connect like that, we could probably skip that step. The question is, would that be a good idea? And we don't know. And as long as we don't have that, language is the way to go. And there have been a lot of people trying to have controlled languages, make language easier for specifications, all these things to kind of try to avoid errors and mistakes. But turns out that eventually people, the fallback is standard natural language for whatever we do, and the contracts, everything. And then it comes down to interpretation. And yeah, I guess as always, finding the right people. And then for the computer scientists, it was harder because as a computer scientist by trade, you are being trained in a way that, very small incremental steps, and every, so to speak, line of code is one very discrete step that you take. And it's absolutely clear mathematically what needs to happen. Whereas the more you step into the language and then the AI realm, the fuzzier it gets, because then it's all based on, stochastic. It's like, it could be this, but it could also be this. And, as a programmer, you go like, no, I mean, that line says that, nothing else. Like there's no wiggle room. You go like, oh, and with AI, there always is. And that's a mindset thing. And I guess that's also one of the reasons why with the early days of AI approaches, there's a lot of, the people who studied physics that are very good at that, because they're essentially used to not having the concrete numbers, right? Because I mean, it's freaking physics. There's always some, now we got, we lost some information here, we got this and this and that. And they were very used to that type of working, like trial and error, right? And computer scientists had a hard time with that. Going like, no, because it should just work exactly like that, because this is how we mathematically specified it. We're like, AI won't. And if you add language in that, recipe, then it's going to get worse, which is a great challenge.
Yeah. Okay. So just jumping in to talk about like the startup life a little bit. So as a company, you've raised a seed round of 4.5 million euros so far. Mm-hmm. And in years gone by, almost all of the tech startups were coming out of the US rather than Europe. And that's changed kind of hugely in recent years. And there's a proliferation now really of new European software companies and startups. Like what do you see as being the major changes which have kind of caused that?
Well, the thing being that, I mean, the type of research and the tech people that know how to build these kind of systems, I mean, there have been as many tech people in Europe than there have been in the US. The problem that I think still have in Europe, a lot less in the UK though, that's my personal experience. But everywhere else is, first thing is the not invented here syndrome, which is big with large European companies. Like, we can do this ourselves. No. And the other thing is, the lack of funding money, because I mean, those companies coming from the US, if you look at who's working for these companies and founded those companies, I think, trying to remember the latest statistics here, but only 40 or something % of the companies that were funded in the US are actually founded by US American citizens. So okay. I've seen a lot of peers, here from Germany, France, and everywhere else, just go to the US because this is where the money was and where people appreciated, like, oh, that's a good idea, let's try this. whereas depending on who you talk to here in Europe, it's like, oh, but you're not bending metal, are you? You're like, no, it's software. Software. Yeah, that's funny thing about, yeah, that's like that internet thing, right? That, yeah, I've heard about that. And so it's more like that. As we all, that's a big challenge we have, right? I mean, the tax savviness of some people and understanding that there's a real business model behind that. And I guess having largely had a large manufacturing background in Europe here, didn't make it better for understanding that software is the next big thing. I mean, look at the top 50 companies on the planet. There's only one, maybe two European companies in there. Everything else is US and Chinese. But if you look who's running those companies, who's working for those companies, who's doing the big efforts for those companies, I mean, that's global citizenship. That doesn't really matter, right? So it comes down to the understanding of that. Well, as Mark Andreessen said, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, software will lead up the world, and as of right now, it is. There might be something else coming in the future, but I think we kind of came late to that party, and I hope we're not going to miss the boat here, because the same with us with the funding round now. There was no reason besides the early bird, the investor we went with, speaking to German funds, for instance, because they still have a hard time wrapping their head around the whole software AI thing, and they're looking at KPIs that work if you're selling shoes on the internet, and this is something they can grasp because like, oh, this shop, I get this, but this is not how the business models in our industry work, and it's crazy. With the same pitch, you're talking to a US investor, they look at it, they ask completely different questions. They're excited to see that, what you're making. You're actually making money with that already? Like, yeah, how do you think we paid our bills so far? I mean, this is a seed round, right? We've been there for 2 years, so someone had to pay the bills. Like, okay, and they're not even used to that in the US. You go like, yeah, you've been there for, I mean, obviously, but this might have cost you like $5-10 million or something just to get there, without even having customer traction yet. So a mindset thing. And if I would know how to change that, I would love to help with that. And I keep telling that people, say, listen, I'm just quoting Metallica here, it's open mind for a different view. Just look at what happens in the last 5 years should actually show you, even as an investor, that probably you should invest in these kind of technologies more, and it gets better and better. But it's still a long way to go, and it comes down to overall society not understanding what we're doing. I mean, I always say, I mean, you can do this in England now, not in Germany as of right now, I guess, but if you're sitting in a pub with 200 people or outside and look around, like, who of these people probably has a good idea of software? 200 people, I want to say 6%, 4%, maybe less than that, like really how it works. But who of these people are using software and paying for it? Well, everyone, right? I mean, you all need your 1,000 quid iPhones and all that stuff. It seems to be mandatory. And so I say, like as a drug dealer, you want to be the dealer. You don't want to be the one consuming the drugs. And there's not enough drug dealers around, which is us creating that kind of software, and others just grasp that concept fully, and they're making, well, not billions, it's trillions in the totals, right? With that, because everyone needs it or wants it, and you look at the YouTubes and all the other stuff. It's just people that, okay, yeah, sorry. Look at the YouTubes and other stuff. It's just there's people from all over the globe running the show there. It's not just Americans, right? But they just have a different approach to that. And I guess the same is true for China. Though for many of us, China is slightly different in terms of how it works and whether you want to do this or not. So for most of us Europeans, the US is just closer. And I guess this is why many just eventually retreat, getting a subsidiary there, or just moving the IP to the US, and then just go from there. But yeah, again, okay, if you have better experience here or solutions, I'm more than welcome, because eventually this is not going to help the what do they call it, the old continent. Everyone migrating somewhere else doesn't help here. So
yeah. And in your career, you spent a lot of time in the business world and also in the academic world. I was interested, what kind of lessons do you feel like those two worlds can learn from each other, especially in a startup, like, what can you take from academia into startup?
Mm-hmm. Well, academia is try it. If you have an idea, as weird as it may sound, try it. For us, it was back in the day, it was a multilingual approach, like being very specific. I said, this should work, and had a mathematical concept on a whiteboard. And I said, let's just try this. And it turns out it did work. Now productizing that's the part of the company world. There's a different approach of doing stuff at the ivory tower, which is research, and then actually building a product from that, which is a lot harder to do. That might be the second advice to startup founders. If you're doing something in the AI space, doing something in the lab, not easy. Doing something properly as a productized version, very, very hard. And if you look at the amount of time you're allocating to that, it's probably 5 to 10% on the research stuff. Like, okay, it works, and now it's another 80 to 90% to properly building it, at scale and all that. The other thing which you learn from the company side is, to make decisions and not have them linger forever. In the startup world, you probably shouldn't act like a corporate, like have a lot of agreements and 5 meetings for one decision. It turns out that, and again, this, I guess we all learned that from Amazon, right? I want to say 99% of your decisions are revertible. So just make it, run with it, and please don't take 2 years to realize that this was a stupid idea. But we have actually in our employee contracts, we have a clause where it says making a decision is better than no decision, whatever that might be, because you can't always ask, your superiors or whatever else. I mean, being a startup, there's no superiors. It's just 35 people anyways. So say, hey, if you need to make the call, make the call. Your best judgment, and that usually works because we're all smart people. And that's that part. And then don't be afraid. What do you got to lose? Realistically speaking, not that much. Just do it. And that's one of the parts where I say we got to be careful with the research experience, because sometimes you can do stuff for a year or 2 years, and then you come back with, I just mathematically proved. This is completely sound. It will not work. Yeah. You probably shouldn't do this. You probably shouldn't do this too often.
Helpful in a business.
In a company setting, once might be okay-ish. If you always take 2 years to come back with like, yeah, this thing, no. And I proved that it won't work, by the way. These are nice results from an academic perspective, but from a company perspective, you should probably cut this thing loose earlier and go like, you know what? Let's just put it on the shelf, and we might revisit that in 12 months from now and see what happens. Yeah.
So for just like personally, from your perspective, like going from a deep tech background to becoming a CEO, like that's obviously a really big step. And like, what do you feel has been like the biggest learning curve for you, moving from kind of creating business value, to that pure tech focus?
Administration and sales. Latter of which you obviously have to do in the beginning, and you will learn a lot from that. So for everyone doing that, I just say embrace it, because there's no one else who can help you. The people I mentioned earlier that will give you advice, they essentially tell you, you will have to do this partially on your own anyways. All they can give you some guidance, and then just do it. And obviously you will make mistakes, but it's not a bad thing to make a mistake as long as you learn from it, right? Or just don't do it twice or 3 times. Because then it's not a mistake anymore. Then it's an actual decision that you always want to fail on that part. That is, I want to say, the most important thing. And then also, learn from others, because you don't live long enough to make all that mistakes yourself. And talk to people and networking, which again comes down to meeting the right people. And there's so many people, again, who will do good things for you without asking for anything in return, because that's how the world works. And that is my biggest takeaway from ever since founding thingsTHINKING, that a lot of people will just help you for literally nothing, because they just say, this is fun and it doesn't cost me anything, and I can do this for you, and even it's just an introduction to that and that. And all of a sudden you have a partnership with a huge RPA company that's just went public, and then they go like this, and then they bring you to other customers, and all of a sudden there's more revenue coming in, and they're like, what's in it for me? Or what's in it for them? And sometimes just say, well, it's fine, it's okay. I mean, they might ask for a favor in return eventually, but as of right now, I think I've took more money out of that bank than I put in.
Yeah, the kind of don't ask, don't get sort of message, I think definitely resonates very well in the startup world.
And it's important to try, because that being rejected, I think 1 out of 10 times max you're being rejected. 9 out of 10 times someone will actually help you, or just say, talk to this guy, right? Like, I'm calling you, asking you for advice or anything. Chances that you say, I'm not interested, bye, Sven, close to zero. You're probably going to say, okay, what is it? I'll take 60 seconds to listen to it. And then you go like, I have an idea. And if not, okay, talk to Michael XYZ. And, he can probably help you with that. And people just do that. And I guess this is how the whole economy works. And yeah, coming back to your question, this is how sales works, right? I like one of the advisors we have, or good friends now, said, people always buy from friends unless you're more expensive, then they still buy from friends. Because this is how we operate, right? And again, it's about trust. It's crazy, but this is how it works. And I guess this is the techie part where you really have to learn, because as a techie, everything being based on numbers, you think. And we never had the illusion, because we saw this from other companies, that this product is going to sell itself, even because it's so great, which it is technically, but the world doesn't care. You got to show the world why this is a great tool. And this comes down to distribution channels and all these kind of things, and then just ask for help. That sums it up.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, Sven. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Is it email or website or LinkedIn?
It's probably email or Twitter. Yeah. So email be sven@thingsTHINKING.net. And yeah, other than that, at Twitter, it'd be, I guess, Sven Koerner, Koerner, AKASJK, I think. I don't even know my Twitter handle. Holy, not by heart at least. But email is probably easiest, and then just reach out to that, and more than welcome. So again, I try to give back from stuff I learned, which is not that much yet. I'm still learning, but working on it.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to have a flood of emails now with people asking for advice, but I'm sure you'll learn a lot from that as well. So wish you all the best with your next stage of growth, and it'll be really interesting to see where the company goes over the next few years. Yeah.
Well, let's stay in touch to see what happens. Again, it's a fun ride, and let's see where it ends. I have no idea.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Sven. Bye.
All right. Bye.